The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
This, my friends, is what progress looks like. My dad was impressed with how I was able to declutter the place for his visit. If only he had broadband. He can see the progress I've made since his visit. So yes, with the major part of the great Sift complete, the only thing left to add to the throwaway tote, which is hiding behind chair number 2 over there, are those two devices over there on the table. Whether or not I get rid of this chair is kind of up in the air at this point. These, I don't know what I want to do with them at this point, but they go with the table, of course, but the table obviously isn't going to be used as a dining room table anytime soon. Don't really have much need for it. I have more of a need for a project table to be able to work on stuff with. Otherwise, everything's in the totes or in the boxes. Simple enough. The floor is looking pretty good too. I should probably sweep the big stuff, then send the robot to take care of the rest of the stuff. Everything's neater. It could get a little bit neater if I finish some of the work in progress and decluttered things still further. But I've got some plans for that once we're done with all of this taking stuff to the recycling center type stuff. I contacted the computer shop about the Z5500s. They're not interested in them. Weird. I wonder what this guy's selling then. Is he literally just selling like old refurbs to like senior citizens who just want email and internet or something like that? I'll have to go by his shop at some time and see how Core 2 Duo Central it has become. The catch with the Logitech Zs is that I don't really have much use for them unless a lightning strike takes out my main system. I mean, they're totally superseded by the home theater. So that's the inherent problem there. I could use it for the project area, but I've got a crappier set of speakers to cook first. The Klipsch 4.1 specifically. They have potentiometer issues, so I was thinking of setting them up here. Plus, it's not real surround because it's 4.1, well, no center channel anyways, but I wanted to finish those off before I considered hooking those up as a backup in the project area. But, yeah, well, anyways, I was hack jobbing with that too. Klipsch Sats with a Logitech sub, been there before. Now, on the table are the items that I wanted to talk about specifically in their own video. So, this can almost be like an unofficial part 4 to the Great Sift as we give these things their send-off. Let's begin, shall we? The first item on the project table is this Radio Shack controller. My first ever PC game controller, so old it takes the old game port, not USB. It predates USB game controllers or something like that. This is from around the turn of the millennium, and it is very, very much a shotgun attempt by Radio Shack. This was in the days of their you got questions, we got answers type stuff and whatnot. But this most certainly was a controller that totally, they shotgunned it. They wanted to cover every single control setup that PC gaming could possibly offer. I don't think there were any standards like X input or anything like that back in those days, so, and you could be still playing DOS games at this point on like a Windows 98 system, so they wanted to make sure they covered all the bases, and they did so. I think there were drivers and everything. There was a D-pad, but it clicks. I hate D-pads that click. Sadly, I've seen this as recently as early Xbox One controllers. The analog stick is very similar to a Nintendo 64, which this controller was contemporary to. The sunset years of the N64, but same deal. Definitely more like the N64 than the original PlayStation. And to cover all the bases with the analog support, you could actually zero it manually using the sliders on the side as well. So if it seemed to be off or not zeroing properly, you could just very carefully adjust those sliders to get it to stop moving until the system what 0 was. Very interesting idea. Of course, this is from a long time ago, so you don't see this anymore. USB, I guess it zeros when you plug it in or something like that. You have auto, normal, and turbo for the A and B buttons, and also the other buttons as well. Or excuse me, auto, normal, turbo, interesting. Then you have off, normal, turbo for the other buttons if you want to shut off the extra buttons for a game. Analog, digital, you use the throttle or the trigger buttons, 6 action buttons, sliding throttle, and then triggers underneath, as well as a thing to adjust the speed. And this thing's so old, even the screws are rusting. Holding it was a breeze. Very, very much made for people with big fat-ass hands like me. But in a sense, you could basically... I mean, this is like Turbo Controller Plus, but don't forget, this may be a large-looking controller, but this thing was also contemporary to the Dreamcast. So, large controllers, not so much of a big deal. So... Of course, the GameCube that came out later had the Wavebird controller, which got kind of big as well, and things along those lines. So yeah, definitely, it was an absolute shotgun attempt to make a controller that someone would want to buy in a Radio Shack store, which is where I got this from. And they were successful at least once with me, but yeah. So, unfortunately, it has no future. I have nothing that takes this port anymore. I don't care to mess around with adapters, and the Xbox 360 controllers, the wired ones, cover all the bases for me for controllers these days. The fun part with the 360 wireds is people hated them. So, there are still wired 360 controllers on sale in like Walmarts and stuff. You have to do a little bit of Raiders of the Lost Walmart to find where they buried them in the shelves, but cheap controllers for PC gaming now is pretty much wired 360 all the way in this neck of the woods. So it's time for this thing to get its proper send-off, so let's put it in with the next recycling bunch. There we go. It had a good run. Played Revolt with that controller more than anything else, but it most certainly had a good run. Our last exhibit of the night is unfortunately the QCat. Where do I begin with this thing? Well, let's begin with how I got it. So this was a Radio Shack promo in my neck of the woods. There were some other places that you could get this too. They were sending them out with magazines for Pete's sake, and people had magazine subscriptions back in the day. Remember magazines? Well, anyways. I got this at I actually found out, there was a friend of mine at the time, one of my IT friends, who, the same person that made fun of me for having everything HP and a compact mouse, he had one of these things one night. I was like, what the heck is that? You got a cat on your computer? He's like, oh yeah, it's the QCat. It's this cute little device they got from Digital Convergence. Go pick it up next time you're at Radio Shack. So I did. It made for some really nice jokes, because I got on AOL Instant Messenger and talked to some of my relatives, and I was like, yeah, you know, most computers have a mouse, my computer has a cat. You know, how does your computer have a cat? Once the bad jokes subsided, though, the QCat was an absolute disaster. It was a solution chasing a problem, basically. The way these things worked was you had a program that you installed, then there were special barcodes in print media of various types. So you would have a little crap-ass barcode scanner, you'd see the QCat code, like that, ding! It would make a noise, take you to the website. So, if you're looking through a magazine at, like, an ad for Coca-Cola, hey, look, a QCat code. Ding! You went straight to Coke's website. So, it's kind of one of those things where people think it's a good idea on its own merits, but they don't really find a lot of practical uses for it, because all that this turned into was a proprietary, crappy-ass barcode scanner. And it was proprietary, although there were hack kits to mod the circuit boards to remove the proprietary-ism something or another, the stuff that made it proprietary and not function as a regular barcode scanner. The problem is, when people hacked these things to function as regular barcode scanners after all this went away, they found out it was rather unreliable. It just makes... If you need to have a barcode scanner on your computer outside of, like, a warehouse or a retail outlet or something like that, it's better to just get a cheap scanner than to try and retro-rig one of these things, because it's just... Then there was the spyware. Because these things all had unique hardware identifiers in them, it sent stuff back to the mothership, so to speak, over at Digital Convergence. Oh look, QCat number blah blah blah, and of course Radio Shack loves to take customer information, so wouldn't have been hard for somebody, oh look, this person's scanning Coke ads in their, magazines and whatnot. Ultimately though, it was a solution looking for a problem. And it was incremental innovation, which is something I absolutely hate. When companies take something that's only a little bit better than what's currently out there and make it like it's this life-changing, world-changing wonder something. So, I mean, yeah, it's okay. So there was a connection between the offline print world and the online internet world, and this thing was the bridge between those two. Okay, why did we need that? Why not just finish what you started and just have more stuff online instead of trying to have some kind of tie back to the internet from the remaining stuff that's offline? Well, guess what wound up happening? More stuff's online now. Print media's on the defensive, especially newspapers. So these things were on the losing team no matter what they did. Now, before I give this thing a proper send-off, an old friend of ours is going to verify my suspicions about why I can no longer use this product. Be right back. As its last active service before its current hardware is dismantled, the Dellosaurus is going to vindicate my decision to get rid of the QCat. Basically, the big problem I have with these PS2 keyboard dongles is that usually they require a PS2 keyboard to be plugged in order for the dongle to get power. I run into this all the time with barcode scanners at work that still have these dumb things. If my hypothesis is correct, this isn't going to work when I apply power to it. The little light in the middle won't come on. So, I don't have a PS2 keyboard to plug into this thing anymore, so it's pretty much useless. And I wouldn't want to hack something to be used as a barcode, one of these to be used as a barcode scanner. Anyways, so we just need to apply power, and once we see no red light turn on that QCat, then we'll know that this thing is just like the other devices with a dongle. So, oh, that's cute. It does work on its own.
Epic fail.
See, the QCat has been making me look like a moron for years. Well, so there we have one light, we have another light. It's not even a real laser either, it's two LEDs. It's two LEDs, and it's trying to look for, things that change and whatnot with the barcodes. There are hack kits available, so okay, this thing does run on its own. And yeah, it runs on its own, it runs on its own without needing a keyboard plugged in. Alright? So it made me look like a moron. Thing is though, I've seen these things, people try to use these things as barcode scanners. It doesn't work out too well, and I really don't feel like soldering this stuff. Plus, suppose everything does work. Suppose it were a reliable barcode scanner. Suppose I could get this thing to where it was actually useful for the first time in its life, besides a little gimmick. Haha, my computer has a cat. Yeah. How many times do I want to scan barcode scanners when I'm not on the job? Goose egg! So, I don't really see any potential in this. Therefore, it's time to give the QCat its proper send-off. QCat? Actually, I'm putting it in the bin with the stuff to save, actually. If I ever get curious about hacking this thing to serve as a regular barcode scanner, now that I've verified that it works, it might be worth trying, but I don't really anticipate wanting to do that anytime soon. So, we'll let it sit and sit and sit. Maybe in another 10 years or so, it'll actually start yellowing like other old electronics that I have. Lastly, as the Rap Cats are getting their system going for a Saturday night party, let's close out this discussion by talking about the Dellosaurus. I do not appreciate all the nagging and the harassment that I've been getting regarding this machine. I've made a video called The Dellosaurus Has No Future, and I expect that video's message to be respected. This machine is getting gutted. It's not if, but when. This is a, 600 megahertz Celeron from 2000? It was a low-end machine back in 2000. There are phones that are faster than this thing now. I'll bet there are even flip phones that are faster, but I know smartphones definitely have blown this thing away in recent years. The big thing with this, though, is this system is you don't see these anymore. You see those two-tone Dell Dimensions that are piling up on the refurb sites and in the at the e-waste collection places. So this is older than even that. So if it's possible, I would like to squeeze some kind of system in here to make it, something, maybe even Skylake Core i3, to make a system that looks really old, but actually will play games. Obviously with the limited cooling caused by the power supply setup, and this would probably have to be replaced too if the wattage wasn't correct for the new system. But Now, if I could make something like this that can play some games and maybe even have a graphics card, that would be absolutely hilarious. I'm gonna have to focus a lot on the cooling though, so definitely want a low power chip. Actually, while we're at it, let me see if I can do this with one hand. Okay, so here's the 350 watt Antec True Power, the one that came with my 2005 machine's case. Just gotta wonder here. Ooh, looks like this will fit. So we have the option of upgrading the power supply to 350 watts. And something else that's this shape would fit in here too, maybe? See what I'm getting at here? If it's possible, I'd like to squeeze some kind of really compact gaming system into this thing and get it working. Or maybe buy like a quad-core refurb, like a Core 2 quad or something, just modernize the innards of this thing. That would be comical and hilarious. Especially if I took it back over the folks' place, because my dad would actually still recognize his computer, because he remembers it because it was his first computer. His first computer I still have. My first computer went out with the dumpster at college graduation. So, sleeper computers are something that I've been mildly curious about. So I am very curious as to whether I could make something like that work. In a later video, we will be dissecting this, dismantling it, retiring it properly, because everything else about it is stuff I don't want to mess with anymore. I don't want to mess with ribbon cables anymore. I don't want to mess with parallel ATA anymore, or EIDE, because those old school drives have now been away for so long. Those old school drives have lost critical mass. They are no longer cost effective enough to produce at decent prices. I mean, you're seeing some really ridiculous prices on Newegg for some non-serial ATA stuff nowadays. So I need to at least get something that does serial ATA in here somehow and get this working. I don't care if it runs Steam OS. I just want something in here that's notably more modern. Unfortunately, I've already done the measurements and I don't think an ATX board will fit in this thing. So we're going to have to strip this down to the guts and see what we can hack job or something like that. See if there's any hope for this thing as a sleeper system. If I can get this thing working, I also have that horrible old HP over there that's even older looking. That would be even funnier if that had something kick-ass in it. But the interesting part about the Delosaurus is that the Delosaurus hasn't yellowed nearly as much as that thing has, or half the darn stuff I have in here. So even though it's contemporary, well, it's only newer by like a year or two. That thing's late 90s, this is 2000. It was waiting for me when I went home for my college break. And I don't even think I brought my computer home. Well, I did bring my computer home, but I didn't hook it up. Or I don't know, forgot how that all worked. But no. When I left campus for Thanksgiving break, my dad already had this computer running Windows Millennium Edition. My dad already had this computer running Windows ME, and then I brought my system home for break. But for those couple of days off campus, I just used his Dell for web surfing or something like that, or this thing for web surfing and things like that. But with the kind of iconic, and dare I say, cult following that the Delosaurus has achieved since that Windows 8 video went up in 2012, which was nearly 5 years ago actually, I think it is properly respectful, especially with how this computer doesn't look all that old. It hasn't yellowed a lot. I think it's probably respectful of this system to try and get something working inside of it. And maybe bring it to the local computer shops and watch all those shop owners crack up. So, this should be an interesting project. I just gotta figure out what I can squeeze into this thing. It's gotta be low power, it's gotta be low heat, because we know that the cooling is gonna be rubbish. They look like they might be... Hold up a second. If they're... Nah, they're not. Just barely. Like a machinist tolerance. In terms of being a machinist tolerance, they're just a little... It might fit with a little finagling, but the question is, what kind of a power... So this is 480 watts with rudimentary SATA, rudimentary PCI Express support. What can I squeeze into this thing? The interesting thing that I like about this big one, is that the grill is inside this thing, as opposed to jutting out a little. But we've got some things to consider here with some of these old parts. But yes, the Delosaurus, I'm not going to try and torture it with new OSs. It had an old 32-bit only processor, couldn't handle anything 64, and heck, I even forgot at one point that it couldn't handle 64, because that's been a thing for so long that I forgot. Once upon a time, processors were 32-bit only. So, anyways, the Dellosaurus has a future, just not with this hardware that's in it. That hardware is going to come out as part of the Great Sift, but not on this vacation. That'll be something I do later on. What is something plausible, though, and something that'll be a lot easier with nowhere near as much guesswork, reviving my 2005 system in that silver Antec box. That would be something. So yeah, now that I'm reorganizing stuff and decluttering, let the tinkering begin. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay. Getting my outro screwed up by the Dellosaurus sliding around. Let's just put the cover back on. Come on, you piece of crap. Oh, thanks for the key. Thanks for the product key, you moron. Hey, if you want to play with Windows Millennium Edition, you're the one with the problems upstairs, so to speak. And the chair's creaking as usual. Something I do need to do, though. Wow. I need to get a rug over here, because the slightest little thing is sending this chair all over the place on these hard floors. So I'm going to try and sit still to do a proper outro. If I want to keep a wheeled chair here, I do have to have a rug. So we'll figure that out later on. How about the Dellosaurus from this angle? You can see more Dell stuff that way. Whoa! And I forgot how far back the chair goes. Okay. Now, assuming the material on the chair doesn't make whoopee cushion-like noises anymore because it's rubbing up against something hard like wooden chair there. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.